How's it going guys, Chris here, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at all of those enemy types in Little Nightmares 2. So Little Nightmares 2 puts us back into that twisted world full of monsters and mystery, following the journey of two children, Mono and Six, as they venture through the depressing remains of the Pale City, uncovering its dark secrets while trying to survive all the nasties within it. But before we actually get there, we'll find ourselves on the outskirts in a creepy forest. Now, camping out in the wilderness and Bear Grylls in your way through life would probably seem like the safer thing to do in this world, if it wasn't for the fact that it's also inhabited by a bloodthirsty hunter, who seems to like stalking and killing pretty much anything he can. Basically a deranged version of Elmer Fudd with a burlap sack plopped on his head. The forest floor is littered with traps for the hunter's prey to wander on into, and he doesn't seem to mind what kind of living thing stumbles into them, just so long as he can add them to that trophy collection and satisfy his passion for taxidermy. The stuffed carcasses of some of his victims can be found displayed at his cabin, eerily posed in natural scenarios. But it won't be long until you get yourself on the hit list too, furious that you've disturbed the peace, with the hunter being very determined to chase you through the wilderness, and blast you both away with his rusty old shotgun. It might be a dark, gloomy forest with lots of shrubbery to hide in, but get caught by the hunter's beaming light and you'll probably get caught by some buckshot too. You've got to escape the area in one piece by evading sightlines, using solid objects scattered around for cover, navigating through derelict shacks, swamps and clearings, while basically doing everything you can to not get your head blown off. After getting the hell out of the forest and winding up on the shores of the Pale City, unsurprisingly, things aren't going to get any nicer. And aside from everywhere looking a bit derelict and decrepit, it's definitely not abandoned completely, as you'll soon discover after wandering into a creepy looking school. It turns out that there's still quite a lot of kids here, but these kids certainly aren't normal. Their heads are made of porcelain, and they're just downright little bastards. You've basically walked into a school full of feral bullies, all out to harm you, and even each other. And if you thought the hunter's traps were dangerous, just wait till you see what kind of sadistic things these guys have got rigged up. With the school having more traps than Kevin McAllister's house, you've got to be very careful where you tread, as if you step in the wrong place, well, you won't be getting back up in a hurry. The bullies themselves are extremely hyperactive, aggressive and chaotic, acting like kids that have just eaten 10 bags of Skittles and lost their internet connection while playing Fortnite. They don't seem to have very much respect for anything, pretty much playing by their own rules while they're unsupervised, and their violent nature and sheer determination to kill any intruders will definitely be enough to let them overpower you up close, especially if there's a few of them around at once. The only way to actually take them on in a fight is by using weapons found in the environment to literally crack their heads open. And so long as you can time your swings right, you can smash them to pieces and put them down at a single blow. The bullies might be unruly buggers most of the time, but when the teacher's around, it's a whole different story. She scares the living crap out of them, and for a very good reason. Let's just say that her way of teaching is a bit extreme. Children should be seen and not heard, and if they are heard, well, they won't be seen again. Apart from having a massive wrinkly head and a bit of an unsettling grin, she might not initially seem as twisted as some of the other monsters in the Little Nightmares universe, until she reveals her disturbing party trick, that is, having the ability to extend her fleshy neck and slither that head around like a really messed up snake. This allows the teacher to quickly find the source of any disturbances and deal with the problem there and then. In fact, she will quite literally go to great lengths to search for any troublemakers, stretching that neck out to reach targets far away, bending it around objects to look in otherwise inaccessible areas, practically giving her a full 360-degree view of wherever the hell she likes. So make a noise while she's around, and there's a good chance that that freaky head will come snooping by to investigate. This makes her extremely effective at hunting you down, and unlike some of the other monsters, almost impossible to escape after being found. Hiding is not only the best option, but it's often your only option. With that said, hiding isn't quite so easy when you're up against something that can practically twist around and deform to be almost anywhere, forcing you to plan your routes carefully and be mindful about where the teacher can and can't spot you. She's just as eager to catch you as the other enemies are, but the way she does so makes her one of the most terrifying monsters around. It probably wouldn't be a horror game without a dark, grimy hospital plopped somewhere in the middle of it. And of course, after leaving the school, this is your next destination to get terrorized in. Out of the frying pan and into the fire. The place is chock full of prosthetic limbs and eerie looking figures assembled from them, and it turns out that these figures aren't just inanimate medical dummies, they're actually living mannequins. Human bodies stitched up together using different parts and pieces, which have become hollow shells of their prior selves, driven by instinct and kept alive as patients of the hospital. Let's just say that they've got a lot more to complain about than the egg mayo sandwiches tasting a bit crap. Being confined to those dreary wards has given them a bit of a hostile attitude. Many aren't particularly happy with you wandering through their domain, with some choosing to stumble after you along the dark corridors. Shining your flashlight on them will temporarily put a stop to their jittery, jerky chases, but as soon as that light goes out, they'll spring back to life and go creeping after you again. And in situations where you can't rely on your flashlight, or in rooms with multiple patients clambering around at once, this can definitely crank up the tension, forcing you to work fast and put those multitasking skills to the test. Considering the horribly disfigured, scrambled together from old prosthetics, the patients can still move freakishly fast, with those jarringly stiff movements adding to their overall unpredictability. And unless they've got a flashlight beaming at them, they'll do everything in their power to try and make sure you're caught. Another enemy type you'll encounter in the hospital are the living hands, which come skittering after you like fleshy bugs, presumably being body parts once belonging to the patients, before they decided to detach themselves and go off and do their own thing. Being honest, I don't really blame them. These guys are going to be just as relentless as the patients, and I guess you could say that they're even more effective at bringing you down. This is because they're a hell of a lot more manoeuvrable, able to crawl around on the floor and scuttle underneath the furniture. And they've also got the ability to pounce over distance to give you the old facehugger treatment. They also don't play dead when you shine a light on them either, but they do play dead if you smack them enough times with a big hammer. So that's typically what you'll need to do to stop them chasing you around like cracked out spiders holding a grudge. The living hands can be tricky buggers to deal with at times, especially when they're working together, as you've constantly got to reposition your weapon swings and time them very carefully, to prevent getting latched onto while dishing out the pain. If you're wondering why, or even how the hospital's full of jumbled up freaks and random body parts going for a walkabout, it's because all of these patients, along with their wandering hands, are attended to by the Doctor, a giant swollen mess of a bloke who basically wants to roleplay Frankenstein. Probably the first thing you'll notice about this guy is that gravity doesn't seem to want to work on him. Not in the conventional sense anyway, as he'll pretty much spend all of his time crawling around on the ceiling, hanging down to conduct his work in between, attempting to treat the patients and keep them alive, with the same kind of finesse as a toddler messing around with a dodgy Lego set. At least he's trying. Despite being confined to small beds, unable to die, with a creepy fat guy looming over them all day, the patients seem completely fine with the situation they're in, simply existing as bizarre experiments. And although it might be hard to believe, the Doctor actually takes a lot of pride in his work, which is the main reason why he's not very happy about you being there, with you potentially posing a threat towards his precious creations. If he suspects you're in the room, or spots you dashing underneath an object, it's a safe bet that he'll come charging after you, flipping the furniture and dragging you out from above. So just like most of the other monsters, you'll typically want to stay hidden whenever he's around, carefully plotting your movements while he's distracted by his work. But anyway, let's get away from that dingy hospital now and move deeper into the Pale City, where some really strange things are happening with its residents. As you move through a network of dilapidated apartments and twisted buildings, you'll notice that the people here aren't acting very normal, which I suppose is pretty normal in this universe. A lot of them can be found dead, falling down from the rooftops, frantically dashing around, and desperately trying to get in front of one of the many old TV sets that can be found littered all over the city. These once urban members of society have now become the viewers, transfixed to those TVs due to a broadcast emitted by an ominous signal tower in the distance, putting them into a trance-like state, isolating them from social activity, turning their minds to mush, and basically making them completely oblivious to their current surroundings. Kinda like TikTok. But this transmission's actually a lot more sinister than you'd think, and it's hard not to notice that the viewers' heads are totally deformed, having concaved faces and melted off features, which have been replaced by twisted folds of flesh and sagging skin, sorta looking like they've been punched in the face by Homelander. The viewers might be consuming that transmission, but it's also consuming them too, and the longer they're exposed to it, the more it's going to eat away at them, eventually sucking them in completely. This also means that they couldn't give a rat's ass about the many dangers they might run into in order to reach said TVs either, which is why they're so easily led to their deaths like lemmings, allowing you to manipulate their actions by using a remote control. With that said, they'll also be pretty pissed off if you disrupt them, so much so that they'll even blast out sonic shockwaves from their face holes to murder you for the sheer inconvenience, meaning you'll need to be smart about how you use that controller to avoid being subjected to the viewer's wrath. Probably the game's main antagonist, and one of its most chilling, is a freakishly tall skinny guy known as the Thin Man, a character you'll also find deep in the Pale City, who's directly connected with the transmission from that signal tower. right the way through the game, you'll connect with some of the TV sets yourself, using them as portals to and from each other, but also tune into a frequency to transport you to a mysterious hallway, with an eye-marked door at the end. Eventually, after you've done this a few times, you'll be able to reach the door and open it, but what you'll find inside is the Thin Man, patiently waiting for you to enter. And this gives him the go-ahead to chase you down from here on in, basically being released from his little purple room, now able to follow you out into the Pale City, becoming the next nasty thing you'll need to run away from. Looking a bit like Slender Man wearing a hat, the Thin Man will persistently stalk you throughout the city, eerily pacing towards you while giving off a supernatural aura, which manipulates time, causing his movements to glitch and stutter, also making the world around him warp and twist in his presence. His slow leisurely strolling is a big part of what makes this guy so creepy, contrasting a hell of a lot with most of the other monsters in the world that are all eager to snatch you up as quickly as possible. Those long strides, combined with the slowing down of time, still allows the Thin Man to gain ground on you though, and despite not seeming to be in a mad hurry to catch you, he's still extremely determined to do so, popping up in several different areas, not willing to give up the chase. Before venturing towards the signal tower, you'll get confronted by the Thin Man, and you'll finally be able to take him on in a bit of a duel. It turns out that you've also got very similar powers, and those powers are probably what's allowed you to use the TVs around the city as portals. This allows you to repel the Thin Man's advances, causing nearby buildings to wiggle around and shift into different positions, altering reality while weakening the big dude in the process, finally allowing you to reach the signal tower in the distance and unravel the dark secrets of that doomy transmission. Speaking of secrets, things are going to get a bit more spoilery from this point on, and there might be a couple of plot twists and big reveals in the last part of the guide, just to give you a heads up. So the little girl 6 is, and pretty much always has been, a bit of a mysterious character. She's definitely got a dark side, and her intentions aren't always very clear. Before you dealt with the Thin Man, she got snatched up by him and taken away. And after you made your way into the signal tower to navigate through a bunch of mystical portals, you'll be reunited with her again at the top, albeit in a gigantic monstrous form. She's been heavily distorted and corrupted by the tower's aura, now having stretched out dislocated limbs and long black hair like the girl from The Grudge. She's also completely infatuated by a music box, with that seeming to be like some sort of comfort object. Back when you first found her in the hunter's cabin, she also had a very similar music box here as well, even playing the very same tune. Once again in a situation where she was taken hostage by a monster, possibly using that music box to distract her from reality. This time around though, the music box seems to be the thing that's warped her body and mind, with its supernatural powers putting her into a trance. But if you try and destroy it to break the curse, 6 is going to throw a wild tantrum, instantly wiping away all the trust she had with you, now treating you like her biggest enemy. Monster 6 is now a very dangerous and hostile opponent, protecting that music box at all costs. Get a bit too close, and she'll slap you into another dimension. You'll obviously need to smash it up somehow, but that's not particularly easy while she's looming over it, forcing you to employ some smart tactics and lure her away by using the different portals dotted around the room. Every time the music box gets hit, the building around you crumbles more and more, revealing the dark forces behind the tower's walls, as massive blobs of flesh start to appear all around you. Eventually, you'll destroy that music box for good, while 6 is severely weakened, reverting her back to her usual small self, no longer being that weird gangly monster. Pretty much straight after you've cured 6 though, our final enemy emerges, which is essentially a huge mass of biomatter living inside the signal tower. The building collapses while the flesh walls come chasing after you both, with this potentially being the true source of the transmission, continuously growing and feeding itself using the bodies of the viewers absorbed into those TVs. This creature could be a gruesome amalgamation of the city's residents all fused together as one, kinda like the Brethren Moons if you've ever played Dead Space. And it's obviously not very happy that you're trying to ruin its plans, retaliating to the trouble you've caused by trying to crush you into itself. Fortunately, after managing to evade the beast, you'll find a portal at the end of the bridge allowing you to escape. But unfortunately, that bridge falls down, and your life is now in the hands of 6, who manages to catch you before falling down to the depths of the tower. I did mention that 6 was a bit of an odd character with a dark side, and after giving it a bit of thought, she decides to let you go, forcing you to go plummeting down into the dark abyss. Mono doesn't actually die after falling down, and the flesh monster decides not to kill him either. Instead, it actually presents a chair for him to sit on, which is where Mono remains for a very long time after, left in a state of shock and resentment, unable to recover from his supposed friend's betrayal. It's likely that Mono's been kept alive to be used for the flesh monster's own benefit, so that his powers can be harnessed to help generate the transmission sustaining the monster. Gradually over time, Mono accepts his fate and slowly becomes corrupted by the flesh monster's supernatural aura, aging into a tall, thin, depressed guy waiting on a chair. Let's just say that his older self looks very familiar. Even the name Mono could have been a bit of a nod to this fate, with Mono being a prefix word which is typically linked to things that are alone by themselves. Was the Thin Man actually Mono stuck in a time paradox, trying to stop his younger self from reaching this inevitable fate? Or has Mono now assumed the role of the new Thin Man, succeeding him to carry out the very same job under the tower's influence? Makes you wonder. Anyway, nothing's ever really certain in Little Nightmares, but one thing that is certain is that we're at the end of this video. But if you missed my guide on the first game's enemy types, then now would be a pretty good time to check that out. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up on your way out. Thanks for watching guys, have a good day, and I'll see you in the next one.